Thomas Jefferson wrote, "When all government, domestic and foreign, in little as in great things, shall be drawn to Washington as the center of all power, it will become as venal and oppressive as the government from which we separated." The sage of Monticello. I believe he was a prophet, personally. But luckily, they didn't leave us defenseless, our founding fathers. They saw this coming. They saw that it was a danger. And we're facing it now. In 1798, probably the most hated act ever written, short of the Patriot Act, was passed, and that was the Alien and Sedition Laws. Basically said, if you were an alien in this country and they thought you had treasonous leanings, you were out of here. And you couldn't talk about your government at all, or you were going to go to jail. Well, there was one congressman who was actually reelected while he was in jail. And Thomas Jefferson felt that his letters and stuff that he had written had been looked at when it was in the Postal Service. So Thomas Jefferson anonymously, was found out years later that he did it, and James Madison sought to find an answer as to how the federal government could be constrained. What happens if checks and balances fail? We're seeing them fail now. What institution, if any, had the right to judge between the states and the federal government? Of course, they're going to argue the Supreme Court. But since they're already part of the federal government, that's not a good solution either. So in 1798, James Madison wrote the Virginia Resolution, which basically said, we believe your law is unconstitutional. And because the people are sovereign, and we are, as the state, the vehicle through whom those sovereigns' power flows, we're saying, we're coming between you, the federal government, and our people, saying, your law is unconstitutional. And within our borders, it's null and void. Nullification, it's called. A year later, one was written in Kentucky by Thomas Jefferson, anonymously. These have become known as the Principles of 98. And they've been used repeatedly through history, not tried in recent history. I think we're probably in the next few years going to see how that's going to play out. It's a hated idea by centrists that are for a powerful central government. They hate it, whether you're on the right or you're on the left, because it's going to put a stop to their plans. It's a little like going down to the river when there's a flood time. We have to decide how we're going to fight the flood. Now, we need to send people to the bank. And they go down there with their sandbags, and they're going to berm up all those places where the water tends to want to flow out. Everybody else goes into the town. And you need to form an alternate way for that river to flow, to protect the businesses and the homes that are there. And that's where we're at right now. We've got to do that in our state. We've got to seek out people in this state that maybe aren't involved in government at all, but they're people that are upright. They're people that would do the right thing. And we need to find them. Maybe they're your friends or your neighbors or your relatives. We need to find them, and we need to draft them. We've got to get these people involved and doing the right thing. They need to be fiscally conservative, because we're going to have to stand up and tell the federal government we don't want your money. They're also going to have to be people of character, who are going to care more about the Constitution and liberty than they are themselves and legacy. When we've got to do the same thing on the federal level. We've got to get people in there that will do the right thing. We have to have term limits. We need to see things repealed, like the 17th Amendment. And we need to see the Patriot Act repealed. We need to have statutes that bring our legislature in Washington back to citizen status and not political bourgeois status. We've got to dismantle non-constitutional departments within our government. We've got to bring it back under control. I'm going to end with another quote from Thomas Jefferson. He said, "I predict future happiness for Americans if they can prevent the government from wasting the labors of the people under the pretense of taking care of them."